What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of the Do It for a Living podcast. I'm Kevin Dubois. Before we get started, I wanted to invite everybody over to the My Shop Assist YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, search for My Shop Assist. We have a bunch of videos with the newest version of our software that I've put together. They'll give you a good idea of how the system works. So if you own a shop or do anything service related, check it out. It might help you run your shop better. And we have a lot of tutorial videos and feature functionality videos up there that will give you a good idea of how the system works. All right, so this week we've got Adam McCreery from AFR Autoworks on our podcast. And Adam has been a customer of My Shop Assist for many years. And over the years, we have talked over the phone many times and gotten a lot of feedback from him, how to improve the software and how to improve his shop. And this conversation is going to be excellent and give you a good idea of what we do as a business and rather what all shops do as a business. But when you really take a good focus towards managing business better, you can improve things quite a bit. And I think we're going to learn a lot from this episode. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, here we are with Adam McCreery of AFR Autoworks. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome.
Good. First, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us and actually reaching out to me to share your story, which I think makes it very helpful for us to actually get guests on the show. Is when they have a story they want to share and they're willing to reach out and get in touch with me to do that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, and so Adam, let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself? Like what got you into cars? How did you get started? Where you're from, all that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, I grew up in a small town in northern BC of just a few thousand people. And I guess, you know what? Let's just start with my name. My name's Adam McCreery. I'm the owner of AFR Autoworks. It's a little shop in Red Deer, Alberta. And we do service, performance, a little bit of fab, repair work. And I first got into cars and bikes when I was really young. My dad was a bit of a gearhead. And when I was 3 or 4 years old, my brother and sister and I got a couple of Honda Z50s, which we put endless amounts of miles on. And when I was 7 or 8, my dad told us he wasn't going to fix them anymore. So we'd drown them in the creek, or they'd stop running, and we'd have to fix them ourselves. And I found that quite difficult and challenging at the time. I couldn't see how he could be so mean to us to make us fix our own stuff. But we always got a bit of guidance from him. So pull the air filter out, squeeze the water out of it, pull the plug out, burn it off with a torch, whatever, and kind of started working on bikes and playing around with stuff on the farm there with Dad. So yeah, I remember going over 2-stroke and 4-stroke engine cycle stuff at the kitchen with my dad as I kind of got a little bit older. He'd be there with my uncles, and they'd be visiting, talking about bikes and sleds and trucks and, learning about compression and carburation and ignition timing and air fuels, and, really started learning a little bit more about that as I got maybe 14, 15 years old and playing around with old snowmobiles and stuff like that. So we'd bomb around the field in cars. We had a couple of different Subarus over the years, my cousins and I. And we'd wreck them and fix them and jump them, and we'd rip around the fields with our dirt bike helmets on, and lots of good times. It was a little bit different environment than my kids are growing up in, that's for sure.
And one common theme with a lot of the guests on the show is a background in bikes. So I feel like most of them actually come from like pedal bikes. But
Yep.
Motorcycles has been a pretty common one too, because it seems like younger kids can get into it, at a very young age. Whereas a car, you actually need to be, for the most part, old enough to drive one. So,
yeah, that's true. So, I actually started off with more of an interest in bikes even as I was able to drive, if I'm honest, my dad was quite into bikes. He had an old Norton 850 Commando Dunstall Special that he picked up in England and had shipped back here, toured Europe on it and had it shipped back to Canada. And he actually had a 78 Suzuki GS 1000 that he'd torn the motor down on, put low compression pistons in it, and done a ATP turbo kit on back in the 80s. And that's kind of been in the family forever. And I've had it for the last 7 or 8 years, and I'm kind of restoring it right now. So that was actually one of the reasons why, as I was getting older, I was already kind of familiarized with the idea of being able to modify things and mess with them, because it's just something that people did, it was normalized. Whereas I think for a lot of people, you don't grow up seeing things being done mechanically. It just seems so foreign that it doesn't seem attainable or something that you can just go do, right?
Right. Yeah, you got to take something apart to really understand that it can be fixed, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get going with the business? Like, do you have any education or training or tech school or anything like that?
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I did start working in the trade a little bit, just because I had experience growing up working on cars and bikes with my dad in the shop. He wasn't a mechanic; he was a logger, but we had a shop, and there was, it went from bikes to old trucks and whatever as we grew up, right? And started working at a Cal tire shop, had a really good boss there, really enjoyed it, but never actually planned on being a technician. And that was just extra money for me while I was going to university. And I went to university to do my bachelor's of education technology specialization, so to be a high school shop teacher. So I went down to Vancouver to BCIT after getting kind of the first, 30 credits or whatever it is, and did the tech school at BCIT, where we did CAD CAM, automotive, pedal bikes actually, woodworking, metal fabrication, and some professional writing courses and math stuff, and kind of the gamut as far as anything you might need on the technical side of things. And then went to UBC and finished off my 5 years bachelor's of education there. It was kind of a hybrid program that allowed you to take an existing certain level of credits, do your 2 years after that at BCIT, and then it was a 12-month straight, kind of 2 years into 12 months worth of credits and classes. So you could come out with this degree in a reasonable time frame.
Okay, so you have a college degree. But it's for like teaching.
Yeah.
And so did you ever go into teaching it, or did you just go straight to a shop or something?
Yeah, I pretty much just went to straight to a shop. So there was an Olympic break in 2010 while I was in school, and I'd already picked up a responsible 4-door sedan for when I was going to school. I'd sold my bike at the time and my truck, and I was like, I just want one car. I bought a 92 Subaru WRX. It was just 15 years old. In the States, they have to be 25-year-old to bring in a JDM car, but here it's just 15 years. So it was one of the earliest JDM WRXs that have been brought into the province. And I thought that'd be great because it'd be practical, all-wheel drive. It was super low mileage. So I bought that for traveling back and forth to Vancouver with and going to school. So I needed to tune that thing somehow because it was slow and I was used to bikes.
All right.
And it seemed pretty fun for the first day or two. And I was like, man, this thing's really slow. So I'd put a boost controller on it and found, a downpipe for it and a water meth kit and a wideband. And I was logging it and figuring out, where the MAF cut and stuff was on it. And I got to the point I said, man, I need to be able to tune this thing. And so I talked to a shop out here who had a standalone that could be wired into it, and came out here February 2010 during the Olympic break for 2 weeks and wired that ECU into the car and tuned it on the dyno with some help from the owner of that shop.
Okay, so it was their dyno that you were using.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So as soon as I finished school, I had a teaching job that I actually really wanted, and that position didn't open up. I thought it was opening up the year I was out of school. There's only a really short time between when we finished because it was a 12-month program before the start of the next school year. So we finished in like August or September, and that school year was starting. So if you didn't have a job lined up by the end of the school year, you weren't getting a job for that year pretty much.
Okay.
So
sit around
I
and
thought
wait for a year then, huh?
exactly. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go get my journeyman, because if you can have your teaching degree with a tech ed specialization and a journeyman automotive, in BC, you can get a lot of government funding if you do a apprenticeship program at a high school. So that makes you really, really highly in demand. I thought, well, you know what? I've already got a few hours. It won't be that hard for me to go get my apprenticeship or start my apprenticeship and do my journeyman certification. And so I came back out to Alberta here and started working at the shop for them, and pretty much have just stayed in this industry ever since.
Okay. And so how did you get your business started?
So really, AFR started off in the fall of 2013, and two friends of mine that I've been working with, Floyd and Roy, we started the shop together. It was Adam, Floyd, and Roy for AFR,
Okay.
and it also worked for air fuel ratio. And
That's always what I thought it was.
yeah, it just, and it puts us, if you look at Cobb dealer list, we're always at the top of that because of being in alphabetical order and stuff.
Sure.
Anyways, Floyd had a old Corolla. He was building that after hours. We started helping him out with that. We built this Corolla. It was a cool learning experience, and we just kind of said, hey, this is something we should be doing full time, making a living for it. And we got a bay, started working out of a bay, and then in 2014, I went full time doing it, pretty much.
Okay. And so it was like a sudden transition from your I guess day job to the shop, or did you just cold turkey, just do it?
Yeah, so it ended up being a little more cold turkey than I expected. So for probably a year and a half, I was doing two jobs at the same time. I had a Monday to Wednesday shift at a dealership, and I'd do 3 12-hour shifts that usually turned into 14 or 15-hour shifts, and then I'd work at the shop Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that was a really good way for us to come up with money for equipment and help pay for the bills at the shop and have the commitments there, and also make sure that I could pay my bills at home. And then I actually broke my foot skateboarding at the time, and my other job wouldn't let me come back to work. So I grabbed a rolling chair like I'm sitting on right now, and I rested my knee on it, and I started working. And that's when I started here full time.
Okay. And what made you want to take the risk yourself versus just, maybe going to work for a different shop?
Well, so I like helping people love and enjoy their cars, and I had already developed my own opinions on how, business should be done and how tuning should be done. And I really wanted to be a tuner. I wasn't a tuner at the time. I didn't have a dyno when we started the shop, but I felt like the best path for me to become a tuner was developing my skills on my own, building kind of our own community, and having my own customers. And, there's not a whole lot of tuning shops in the area. There's probably a half dozen or more in the province that do performance stuff, but you can't really just walk up to a shop and say, hey, I want to be a tuner. Will you hire me to be a tuner?
Right.
So I felt like the only path to really do that was on my own.
Okay.
And also, it's much better to live without fear than with regrets, So I knew it was something I wanted to do. If I didn't do it, I felt like I'd always be wondering, hey, why didn't I do that? I really should have done that. I wish I'd done that. I don't want to be that guy when I'm 50 or 60 years old going, what if, so.
Sure. So do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? I mean, like, did you set out to be a business owner, or is it just like you said, where you wanted the tune and it seemed like the only way to do it?
Yeah, definitely. To start with, I was just a guy that wanted to tune, and it seemed like the only way to do it. Tuning was definitely my passion and what I wanted to do more of. Now I would say I consider myself an entrepreneur, and it's definitely been forced upon me, and it's been an unplanned learning curve. I didn't expect it to be as difficult as it's been, right?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people don't like they call themselves an entrepreneur, but in my opinion, like when you start getting down to the nitty-gritty of running the actual business is when you are truly an entrepreneur. Just starting a business and just kind of winging it is more of just kind of like, I kind of don't think that's like a planned entrepreneurship sort of like, business owner. That's just kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not as like a legit as when you actually drill down into the details of running the business properly. That's like a true entrepreneur. So
yeah, it's totally different. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about your business? Like, so you said you started in 2014, so you've been doing it for what, like about 10 years now? What size building are you in? What kind of employee count do you have?
Okay. Well, we've been running for 11 years now, pretty well, coming up on it. 4,800 square feet shop. We have 5 employees currently. We usually range between 5 and 7 people here. And we have 3 bays, 6 hoists, an all-wheel drive dyno, a fab area, an engine room. That's kind of the mechanics of the shop for the most point.
Okay. And are you still the one that does the tuning?
Yep.
Okay, so you run the business and you still are actively involved in working on the vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. And then kind of break it down, like what do you have your other people doing? Are they full-time techs, like a service writer or a salesperson? Like kind of how do you break that down?
So I have an office manager, and she's so much more than an office manager. That's what I call her. She's the service advisor, books all of our appointments, make sure all the parts get ordered, all the phone calls, all the emails that come to the office. She filters them and sends them out to myself or my shop foreman, depending on which of the 3 of us need to handle it. And she's just really fantastic to have here. And that'll be Tish if you call the front office. And in the shop, I've got Devin right now, who's my shop foreman. He's been with me for, it's got to be 8 or 9 years at least now. And he's a Subaru master. Kind of grew up working on Subarus. He started in the trade at a different shop for a while, and I picked him up after he got some experience, and he's been really, really good to have around here. And I have another journeyman, John, and he's a Honda guy. He's excellent tech as well. And then I've got another guy here who's a journeyman as well, and he's been good to have as well. So
is Floyd and Roy still involved?
No. Floyd's out in Ontario, and Roy's moved to BC.
Okay, so they were a part of the business. Did they found it with you, or was it just kind of like you just named it with them and then they just kind of did their own thing? Tell us how that kind of worked out.
Yeah, so they founded it with me. Floyd was around for a couple of years before he moved out to Ontario. He's got family from out there, so it just worked for his life to move out there. Mm-hmm. And then my partner Roy there, I eventually bought him out of the business. Okay. Probably, I don't know, must be 4 or 5 years ago now. Probably about 5 years ago.
So it was pretty mutual, like separation between the two of them. Then essentially, wasn't like angry fist fights and locking each other out of the door, right?
No, I mean, we still get along really well. Okay. I talk to both of them now and again for sure, and I mean, if I said that we got along 100% of the time, basically spending every living hour together, that'd be a lie. But
right, it's like a marriage, right?
It's like a marriage, but you get married to someone because you have the same interests, but not necessarily personalities that mesh perfectly, But in fairness, we always got along pretty well. We had the we had the odd we go at each other the odd time, but no, we always got along pretty well mostly.
Okay. So let's break down like the revenue for the shop. You're a service shop, you do tuning, parts. Do you do web sales at all? Kind of break down like where the money comes in for your type of business.
Okay, so we're about 45% of our revenue is part sales through the storefront. We're probably, getting close to 10% of our revenue being through our online store. We have an online store, AFR Autoworks store.com. And we sell ECUs and camshafts and, different parts on there. Mm-hmm. And then, the other 45%, I think, is basically billable hours or labor, right? Tuning and service and that type of stuff.
Okay. Do you guys build engines or do any like manufacturing of your own parts at all?
We have a couple of our own parts that we developed. Not a whole bunch. That's something that takes a lot of time to get going.
Yeah.
And I have too many hats, but we do have a really cool billet high pressure fuel pump cap for the Golf Rs that we put together, because when you do port injection on them, we've had issues with some of the port injection kits leaking. So if you can change their high pressure fuel pump cap to a billet one that has an ANS or like a -6 fitting on it, mm-hmm. can help prevent leaks. And it's just a really sharp looking unit. And then a couple of our own kits that we've put together for flex fuel sensors and boost control solenoids and that kind of stuff. But really that high pressure fuel pump cap is probably the only really whizzy little part we've put together that we can call our own.
Sure. And I love that, like, you're very similar to me at my shop in that, like, I don't have a CNC machine and really we don't have much fab work at all, but when you work on a specific type of car often enough, you see things that can be improved upon, and you just, if there's no one else doing it, you just do it yourself, right? And those are like easy things you can, if you know how to do even like basic design work or even pay someone or find a friend who can do it. Nowadays, you don't even have to manufacture them in-house. You can literally just take your drawing, send it to like Send Cut Send, and they'll send you a part back in like 2 weeks. So it makes it easy for us as like a more of a service install tuning shop to actually get involved into the manufacturing side of things as well, right?
Totally, and we're actually really lucky because we have a machine shop just 2 blocks from us that does awesome work. They're really good to deal with, and if we talk to them and we're willing to do a production run of 20 parts or something, the price is quite reasonable, and they're run by car guys too, actually. Barry Danilick is the guy that runs it, and he's got the fastest door slammer naturally aspirated car in the world right now. It's run like a 397 in the 8th or something crazy like that. So just a really cool group of guys to have just down the street from us to help us with machining little parts for us and whatever has to be done, right? So
yeah, very nice. Okay, and then as far as like revenue goes, have you seen a steady growth in that, or do you kind of plateau when you get a certain number of people? Kind of like, how have you determined how and when to grow the business?
So definitely there's been times where the business has grown too fast and the efficiencies dropped so far that it's just been, we're doing more work, I guess, but just more expenses, right? Mm-hmm. So my focus for the last 5 years hasn't been on growing the business, but it actually has. Considering that we typically have less techs now than we did 4 or 5 years ago, the real focus has been on improving our shop efficiency. Mm-hmm. And as you improve your shop efficiency, let's say your efficiency goes up by 20%, chances are you're going to sell about 20% more parts too. So really what I've been trying to do is optimize our, kind of profit and loss rather than optimizing our gross revenue. There was a time where I sat down with my accountant and he said, if you don't make at least X amount of money, you're not going to be able to pay yourself properly. And I looked at that number and went, that seems impossible and that seems crazy. And, definitely I've had a lot of sit downs where I'm going, how am I going to make this work? But like I said, the number one thing is shop efficiency. If I can have myself and the 3 techs billing out, X number of hours every day, then we're going to do well. And if we're under that number, then we're not going to do well. So that's definitely the number one thing that we've been focusing on. And a lot of the other stuff has kind of fallen in line. That being said, I've looked at ways of trying to reduce our expenses and trying to be more aware of where our money's going and reducing the amount that we're spending for a specific part or whatever, right?
Sure.
So it's definitely more than just that, but that's,
Okay.
the bottom line, I guess.
Yeah, and we'll go into this a whole bunch more here after. I kind of want to finish. We'll go over the rest of the business things, and we're going to get more into depth into this efficiency thing here. So, continuing with the employee stuff, you're in Canada, so you don't have to pay them health insurance, correct? But do you offer any other benefits to your employees, or is it just straight hourly or salary pay?
So I do hourly pay for everybody. I've tried flat rate pay, which, do you guys have flat rate in the States?
Yeah,
Is that how you do it there?
they do it both ways.
Okay.
Both of them are pretty common. So
Yeah, so flat rate, I find that I've run into issues with techs rushing to do things and maybe things not getting done the way I'd like to see them done. So I make sure that everybody gets paid hourly. We do benefits. If someone's worked for 3 months for us, they do get health benefits. So that would be optional things like massages and chiropractic and dental and stuff like that. So you'll get 80% of that paid for, or whatever, is up to a certain value. So that's something else that we offer. Holiday pay, all that stuff, right? But pretty much just the health benefits, and we also pay Canada Pension Plan. I don't know if you have something like that in the States or not, but there's a couple little additional things we pay for. No, we don't have to pay for their health insurance, but they do get health benefits.
Sure.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. So when you said massage and stuff like that, I laughed because I've never heard of anybody in the States offering that. In fact, most of them don't even offer health insurance, which is also not provided by the government. So most in this industry, I feel like it's very ragtag, kind of not super professional until you get to the bigger businesses.
Yep.
And then everybody just flies by the seat of their pants with no health insurance. I feel like it's pretty uncommon at the installer level anyway. So.
Yep. So I know you're interviewing me, but you don't have to have a journeyman certification to run a shop in the States, do you?
No, you do not. You don't have to have any certificate. Well, no, at least in Texas, you definitely do not. There's no requirements whatsoever. You just have to have a toolbox, and then you have to pay the state money. So you have to set up an LLC or whatever with the Secretary of State here, and then essentially just pay your taxes. That might be different in California, maybe Colorado. There are some other states that are a little more stringent on who can do the work. But yeah, at least in Texas, I have no certifications other than an engineering degree, which does not certify me to work on cars with anybody, but
Yep.
And
yeah,
so,
I know here you can't run an auto shop unless you have an AMBIC license.
Okay.
And if you're going to work on cars and you want to have an AMBIC license, you have to have at least one journeyman technician on staff. So if you're going to go start a shop by yourself and you don't have a journeyman ticket, someone could phone you in and you could get shut down or get fined or get sued or whatever, right?
is that journeyman license fairly easy to get?
It's a 4-year program.
Oh, so you're like a degreed mechanic essentially, or at least a technical degree, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your Red Seal journeyman certification here, they call it.
Okay.
It's a 4-year program. You're not in school for 4 years. You go for 2 months out of each year. Then you have to have a certain number of hours before you go for your next year, or before your overall completion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone has to sign off on a book that says you've spent this much time on this type of task, and you have to have another journeyman that signs off and says that they think that you're basically good enough to go do your next year of schooling, right?
Sure. Okay. Do you have a formal business plan written for the business?
Yeah. My business plan gets changed a little bit year on year. I would say it's not the best business plan. my business plan's partially for something that I could show to the bank, and it's partially for me to make sure that when I go do my planning at the end of the year, I'm making sure that I'm kind of that I'm referencing my core values and how I want the business to look and act while I'm making my plan. Really, a lot of my planning is done outside of my formal business plan, I guess. I have what I call my greatest spreadsheet in the world. And usually what happens is I kind of read through my business plan, maybe make a couple of tweaks, change the date at the top of the page. And then most of my real planning happens on my greatest spreadsheet in the world. And I start making notes underneath of it for each revision each year of how I'm hoping different changes I'm going to make are going to affect things. And I usually draw like a mind map every year. I don't know why that works for me, but I try to get my head in the right place. I usually spend half a day trying to get my head in the right space to make sure I'm doing, making sure I'm planning correctly and with the right intent. And then, usually it ends up being a few days that I spend after my year end, at least, coming up with breaking things down, and then little tweaks as the next few months go by. And then by the time we get into March, it's just hoping all the dominoes are set up right, and it's just flat out from then until October, November again.
Okay. So you use your spreadsheet, and essentially you do have a formal business plan written to plan yourself out then. So you are taking it serious in that you're revising it every year and following up with it and continuing on with it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you use to manage the business?
So business management, what we do is we have our QuickBooks for the accounting side of things. We use your My Shop Assist for shop management, and kind of sideline activities we have. We have Google Drive where we have shop documents shared and saved, and we have email that my shop foreman has an email, I have an email, and the office manager has an email, and we kind of cycle things through there as well. And that would pretty well cover what we're doing for shop management.
Are you using QuickBooks Online or desktop?
QuickBooks Online.
Okay. And then are you doing anything with customer, CRM stuff, customer retention, like email blasts or anything for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I know that I should be doing a bit better there, but the closest I'm doing for that is through our AFR Autoworks store.com.
Okay.
If we have new products that come in, then I'll send out bulk emails to subscribers on there.
Okay.
We're not really doing bulk emails for customers or anything like that currently.
Sure. Yeah, and it's always questionable on how useful that stuff is. Everybody gets an absolute ton of that stuff, and I think unless something really catches my eye, 99% of it gets ignored. So,
yeah, I think where it could be helpful is, somebody comes in for a certain service, and you can say, hey, you're going to be due for this in another 6 months, roughly.
That's
Do you
right.
want us to send you an email in 6 months, and just write an email right then and have it scheduled for 6 months down the road as a reminder?
Sure.
That would probably be helpful for our customers, and might be helpful. We usually have a little bit slower month in December, January, February for the service and repair work. So I'm sure if we, we're a little more on top of our planning and CRM, we could probably fill that in a little bit better, right? But
so does location affect you at all? I mean, you're in Canada, and us Americans all make fun of you Canadians for being in the middle of nowhere, right? But does that help or hinder you at all?
So I'll talk about our location in two ways. So first of all, we're in Canada, and Canada's a great place to be. Definitely has some challenges for performance stuff. Now, one of those challenges is shipping. Brokerage and duty would be kind of all bulked into the same sort of challenge here. So most of the products we sell are from the States, okay? Anytime that we ship a product from the States up here for a customer, there's a cost to that. Nothing's free coming across the border, and the shipping's not super cheap either. If you have a shop in the States and you order from a lot of the suppliers, the shipping's really cheap or next to free, right? And there's not really any additional fees when it shows up. So it's a little easier to plan to have a specific margin. So if you have 15% off on a product and you talk to your customer and say, hey, this is the price of the product, and you order it and sell it to them, you're still going to make pretty close to 15% by the time you sell it. You're going to have your credit card fees and a little bit of shipping, but you're still probably making 10% on it or something. You know what I mean? You make something. If I sell someone a product that's 15% off and I don't charge them for, whatever brokerage and duty bill shows up with it and shipping separately, chances are by the time I get it 15% off, I'm lucky if I make a few percent off on it. There's definitely times where someone will order a product off my website that maybe I don't have a really good margin on it. I'm shipping it somewhere a little bit more obscure and the shipping calculator's not right. And by the time I've shipped them that product, I'm like, oh, that hurt. I lost a couple $100 selling that product,
Yep.
So that has its own challenges there. The cost of bringing stuff across the border is challenging. It'd be definitely nice if we could stock a lot higher volume of parts or order in higher volume. I do try to do that with our, most frequently sold products for sure. But that is its own challenge. It's not a dense population mass. Our city's, I think it's 120,000 people or something like that. It's a pretty small city.
Okay.
We do have Calgary and Edmonton that are north and south of us, or south and north of us. And we draw a lot of our performance customers from elsewhere in the province.
Okay. So you're a destination shop then, that helps, right?
Yeah, we're definitely a destination shop. Our service and repair work is probably 70% local.
Okay.
But our performance stuff, I would say, is maybe 15% local,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely a destination shop.
Okay.
But the one nice thing about that is people here are a little more normalized with that. It's not uncommon to take your car a couple of hours or a few hours away to try to find a shop that you're happy dealing with, right?
Sure. Yeah, and so have you ever actually doubted yourself and, wondered if what you're doing isn't working, and how do you overcome that feeling to move forward?
There's definitely times where I've wondered if this is the right path for me or not. Back to not being willing to live with regrets, even times where I've doubted myself, I knew that this is what I needed to do to be happy with myself. And I try to take stress as my body telling me to prepare for a challenge. That's what I keep telling myself anyways. And in fairness, I also have a fallback, right? So I'm trained to be a high school shop teacher.
Okay.
I now have my journeyman certification. I could go work at a technical college as a trainer. I'm sure I'd be, I've had a couple of job offers actually before for that same sort of role. So I know that I am a valuable person to be hired by somebody else.
Okay.
If something here didn't work out well, if I failed, the worst case scenario is I, end up having to lose something that I, owe too much money on or whatever it might be,
Right.
and go do a job that probably pays me better and has less stress.
Okay. So you have a built-in risk mitigation just by your experience, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's the worst experience you've had in business? And would you do it differently if you could?
Well, I'll start by saying the CRA doesn't play real nice. The IRS for you Americans.
Okay.
Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we were having some hard time keeping up with our taxes, payroll taxes to be exact, payroll and GST, and those are trust funds, right? So
Okay.
If you're not paying on those, whether it's a corporation or not, the government will come take your house or whatever to get their money back, right?
Sure.
So we had 7 employees at the time, and if you're getting to the end of the month and you pay all your employees first, and maybe you want to buy yourself some groceries and you're not having quite enough money left to pay the government, with 7 employees, it doesn't take that long for me to I'm supposed to submit their income tax for them, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long with our income tax here to build up a sizable deficit. doesn't take very many months. So I'd actually discussed a payment plan with them once I kind of got things back under control a bit. That payment plan was agreed upon. My former bookkeeper was required to send in some certain documents, and they never received them.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't know what happened there exactly, but the CRA ended up freezing our accounts. And at the time, it seemed like I largely dealt with that situation myself. I flipped a couple of cars. I used my personal credit, my line of credit, whatever spare cash I had to make sure that anything that needed to be ordered was still ordered and the shop kept operating. But it was definitely a stressful time.
Sure.
And, around the same time, one of my business partners was going through some health problems and maybe wasn't able to contribute or help in the way that, they would have liked, right?
Okay.
So anyways, I needed to be 100% accountable for things. So that's when I really started going, hey, I need to make a change and start doing things differently here. So
okay, awesome. And so that was kind of the worst part of business. Obviously, dealing with the IRS in the U.S. is also quite horrible. I have been audited, like a small audit, because I did something similar. Forgot to, I switched from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online and forgot to submit a, they're called 941 forms, I think, or 942. It's 941 and 942 are the two forms. I forget which is which now. I paid the taxes, but I didn't submit the form. And so 3 years later, they're like, oh, you never submitted the form. And so now you owe this tax money and all the fees and fines related to it. And I'm like, wait a minute. And it was like, for one quarter, I think it was like $13,000 that I owed them. And I'm like, what? I know I paid that. And I went to the bank and found the receipts. And I'm like, I definitely paid it. But it was just a silly paperwork error. And then I had to have my CPA, essentially, they're not my bookkeeper, but, accountant. They had to go back and deal with it, and it's a nightmare. It's so stressful because, you're right. The IRS in the U.S. probably similar to yours in Canada. They just no shit's given. They just immediately start seizing shit if they want their money. So.
Oh yeah, well, and it was kind of it was just a recurring thing too, right? Because it became really stressful. Became this situation that I had to deal with. Thought I got it under control, and then it was like a phone call one day. Surprise, like anyways. In hindsight, I probably should have it should never have become as big of an issue as it did, but
that's a learning thing, right? Like that's just a part of owning a business, is dealing with this like crazy stuff that you never ever think about until you are having to deal with it. It's just, you can try to do it by the books until you realize like you may not know exactly how the game is played, like you may not know exactly how to submit the taxes at the right time and how much to submit. And it's just hard to learn that stuff, right? It is.
Yeah.
So what's something you're doing right now that you are excited about?
I'm excited about where our business is at. I really help people. I really enjoy helping people enjoy their cars.
Okay.
So the best part of any of my day is if somebody's been here, had their car worked on and tuned, I always do a road test in it afterwards. Oftentimes the customer's here and I say, jump in and come for a ride. And they get to feel their car with a bunch more power, and lots of smiles. I really like that. I'm excited about our web store, and that's been a learning curve on its own. We've been doing more Subaru stuff the last, 5 or 6 years. We do a lot of Subaru work here. We have a shop Impreza that's a drag car. That's been pretty fun this year. Did a 9.1 at 162 on the stock trans, and we've been learning a lot with that. I like that because I still really enjoy the tuning. Like that's where I got my initial interest doing all of this. I'd say mostly I'm excited about where the business is at and moving forward from here.
And you're still finding time to actually race your own car too, which I cannot say I can. I have not been able to do that in years. So.
Yeah, maybe it's not as important as I think it is, but ever since we started the shop, we always had a shop car per se, right? So we started off with the Corolla, and we go to the track with that. It was a 3RZ powered Corolla. We got it. It's ran low nines now, like an old AE86 Corolla, right? And that was kind of our first shop car, and we got a lot of business from that, and met a lot of people, and had a lot of good times. And you just learn so much when you are trying to go faster with a car. You know, you're not learning on a customer car, you're learning on your own stuff. And there's really not much around here for any kind of import drag racing either. So a lot of our business has come from that all along. And I mean, I wouldn't say we're a shop that specializes in import drag racing by any stretch. But if you do look at our area, you know, there's so little of it going on that if you are into that, you know, there's a good chance you've at least heard about us, right?
Okay.
So after the Corolla moved on, we had couple of drift cars that we were involved with. After that, we had a Supra, stock bottom end Supra that we ran for a while. It was Kyle Williams' car.
Okay.
We helped him with that, and we got a lot of Supra work from having that. And then, you know, we still do Supra work, GTR work, Subaru stuff, but I actually bought that Supra from Kyle Williams for a while. We ran it for another couple of years before we sold that, and I said, man, we really need to have a fast Subaru, you know. We've never built anything that's running 10s or running 9s or 8s or, you know, so lots of 500 horsepower Subarus and lots of good reliable cars out there, but we'd never done anything that was making, you know, big power for a Subaru. And so that's where that started. We just started on a mega budget, actually, flipping parts. And I think I had $3,500 into it and a whole bunch of time
All right.
when it ran 10s. And then, you know, started building it to run 9s, and now we're kind of shooting for 8s with it, right? But we've learned a lot doing it too, right? When customers come in and they say, hey, I want to make this setup or make this power level or, you know, do this, I can say, well, this works and this is what we've done before, and this is where you're going to run into these issues, and this is the kind of, you know, concerns we'll have, right? Because we've been there for all of it on our own cars, right?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's very important, is to do it on your own stuff before you start trying it out on, you know, like a new customer car or something. But yeah, that's definitely the route you should be going, or I think everybody should be going. So
yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to really focus on business management with you, because you and I talk on the phone, I don't know, quite often, through the MSA stuff, of course, but like we talk about business management and like what you can do to improve your business. So I wanted to start by saying, like, when did you realize you needed to do something to improve your operation? Like were you losing money, or were you just breaking even? What kind of like made you realize, hey, I need a shop management system and I need to be doing this differently?
So we were definitely losing money. I would say every month we were going backwards because, like I said, I wasn't keeping up with CRA payments. So clearly there wasn't enough left over at the end of the month, right?
Yep.
It was difficult with a partner to steer the ship, you know, per se. So around the time we ran into issues with the CRA, I really need to be able to either get off this ship or steer it, one or the other, right?
Yeah.
And that's what prompted me buying my last partner out.
Okay.
And that's when we got MSA. I'd actually been listening to a lot of this podcast at the time. It's hard to find info for running an auto shop, let alone running a performance auto shop.
That's right.
There started to be more stuff out there. When I found this podcast, it was a huge impact for me because it was the worst time, you know, for me, like my biggest struggle running the business, lots of stress, and it wasn't a place that, you know, it owned me.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I didn't own the shop. It owned me. It was so many hours of my time. And sure, I'm doing what I love, but it was, you know, 80% plus hours a week. It was time away from my kids and my wife. And, it wasn't worth it at the time per se. It was me going, hey, I think it still has all this potential. I just need to raise my own intelligence and make the correct decisions. And I know this place can work. Mm-hmm. But so listening to the podcast, we started off by implementing My Shop Assist finally. And that was our first shop management software we ever got. Before that, it was done just on QuickBooks. So I'm getting sidetracked here, but we got My Shop Assist. That's what I'm getting at.
And you obviously like and I had the same conclusions with when we heard Reed start this podcast. I was like, oh my God, this is like such a valuable resource for us, shop owners, because I had no idea how to run my business really. Like I screwed it up so badly, which is why we started MSA to begin with. But like, there's no resources out there for that. And this individual podcast with you, we're gonna drill into this quite a ways on like how we deal with this, like managing a shop part. Because most of the other episodes we've done, we just glaze over it really fast. Like we just skim over it, and most of it's just about the history and the story, and like a little bit about the business. But like how we actually deal with that is still not really covered that well with this podcast. So let's keep going deep into that. So you're using MSA, you were using QuickBooks before that. Explain to me why. What problems were you trying to solve with that, and what made you want to do this?
So, first of all, I knew that for the amount of hours we were here and the number of people that were here, we weren't billing out anywhere near enough hours. My efficiency was poor, but I worked, 18-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week, right? So I would always bill something out. I'd always bill a decent amount of work out, but I was killing myself doing it. That being said, when we'd had 4 or 5 techs and we didn't have a really good week or a really good month, I'd just work more and I'd make up the difference, right?
Yeah.
If we were getting up to the 23rd, 24th of the month, and I'm going, man, we got 1 more week. I got to make sure everyone gets paid in a week. We've got our rent due, and then we have the dyno payment coming out, and we've got, all this stuff going. I'm like, we're not close enough. I got to get this car done, or I got to get this car put together, or I got to get this sold in order to make it work at the end of the month. And that's how I operated for a long time, because I could do that, and I just did do it, right?
Uh-huh.
When we went up to having, 7 technicians or seven or 8 people here at a time, if we didn't have a good week or a good couple of weeks, there was no way that I could make up for it any longer by working harder.
Your portion of the labor wasn't enough, essentially.
Yeah. So, even though we had the work here and the work was getting done because we weren't billing out enough hours per tech per day, if you've got 6 or 7 guys and they're all billing out 1 hour less than a day than they should, there's no way that I can stay after 5 o'clock and bill out 6 or 7 additional hours every day.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I said, okay, things really need to change. I've got to get a hold of our shop efficiency. We'd have people come pick their cars up, and they would think their bill was one value, and we would think their bill was another value. And, the person in the office would say, well, I talked to him about this and he approved that and he knew it would be that, but we didn't have it in writing. We didn't have signed off work orders 99% of the time. And the amount of time we were just spending going over work orders when customers came to pick their cars up was huge. The amount of time it took to do estimates was huge. Someone would want to engine build on an RB26 or something, and you'd sit down and, okay, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And, when you can't just select the parts because they're stored in a database and you have to look up the price for each one on your different suppliers, and you have to look up the labor time for each line every single time you do that job, because I mean, a GTR or whatever, you're not going to have a labor time for that anyways, unless you've made it yourself. But, you know, the time we were spending doing estimates, the time that we were spending with customers when they came to pick their vehicles up, none of it was lending itself to being able to be efficient. We didn't have the structure required, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's really important about our industry as a performance industry is we do not have book times that you can very easily just look up to see how much time it is to do, like a water pump on a Corolla, We're doing stuff that's like a custom fab, intercooler or intercooler pipes, or you're building an engine like a performance engine. There are no book times for that, and that makes it extremely hard to estimate, unless you've done it before, which is the important part. If you do it once and you track the time, that makes the next time way, way easier to estimate. Right? And that's kind of a lesson you've kind of learned, right?
Absolutely. It wasn't like we had this big change from day one when we started My Shop Assist. So what I felt like I was missing when we started getting a shop management in was, like, I can tune a car and I can select all the different PIDs I want to log, and I can do a dyno poll, and I can look at all these different parameters and have them in a logical graph and look at how they relate to each other. And I can do scatter plots, and I can learn a whole bunch from just recording that car for a bit. And I was looking at our business going, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to change. I just know that when I get to the end of the day, I can bill out this many hours, and the guy on the other side of the bays only billed out this many hours. And, I know that he's a decent tech,
Yep.
And I can't just go yell at him like, hey, you need to work harder and work faster.
Right.
Because the real issue was coming down to, it was me not having set up proper management and proper strategies and giving anyone the tools to be able to do what they needed to do properly. Parts ordering, how many times do we have a job in and we think we have all the parts, and we get started and, we're missing this part and this part still. Oh, I forgot to order that. Just little things would just kill productivity. You push a car in to work on it, and you pull all the, these nicely labeled bins, and you've got all the parts, and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do now. And you get pumped about it. It's something you really want to do, and you're missing one of the first parts you need.
So they push it all off to the side again,
and
right?
you stack it back up on the shelf. The car gets pushed out, and now it's 11 o'clock, and you haven't done anything that you can charge. You might have done a little bit of something, but you basically just destroyed half a day's productivity because a part didn't get ordered, right?
Yep. And so you've mentioned this already, and you've told me about it as well, but I haven't gotten any very much detail into it. But you said you have an Excel spreadsheet that it sounds like you're using like QuickBooks and MSA data feed into this Excel spreadsheet you have to help you make decisions. So kind of describe it to us. What are you doing with it? What are you looking for? What are you putting into it?
Well, I'd say, I'll backtrack just a little bit. When I got in trouble with the CRA, I didn't have the option of not running the shop, right?
Okay.
If I had said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, then they just would have came and taken my house, and I would have started a new life, right? And maybe that wouldn't have been so bad. I don't know. But anyways, I needed to sit down and go, how am I going to turn this thing around? At that, we started doing the MSA stuff. I started getting a bit of data, but I hadn't figured out a way to filter that into a decision-making process, right?
Okay.
And I went, I need to make this shop successful. It's only me now. I'm 100% accountable for this. And I need to sit down and design our year so that this place can keep running, so I can keep doing what I love to do, so that our customers can keep bringing their cars here. And, I do think that we do a service, right? So it's not just me that that is affected by shutting the shop down, I think that our customer base would have been really disappointed if I'd said, hey, I'm not going to run this place anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, to steer everything in the right direction, I sat down and said, okay, I need to decide what needs to change. So how am I going to make that decision, right? How do I see if my shop rate needs to go up? How do I see if I need to charge more for parts? How do I see how increasing our shop rate actually affects our profitability at the end of the year? How do I see if an employee not showing up for work is making a small or a big difference to the success of the shop, Yeah. So back to my spreadsheet, how it started, what it does. It started by me going, all right, I need to understand my effective hourly rate. Just like your YouTube video that you put up, I needed to be able to properly calculate my effective hourly rate. And that was just the very basic thing. So I took all of my fixed costs, stuck them on the sheet, stuck all of my payroll costs on the sheet, stuck all of my debt servicing costs, my dyno payment, Snap-on bill. Yep. I had a commercial loan that I had at the time, any kind of CRA, GST, yep. Payments, arrears, whatever. Anything that I had as a debt servicing cost, a payroll cost, or a fixed cost, I put on the sheet. And I already had my idea of how I wanted to really fine-tune everything and break everything down into individual sections, right? So a friend of mine runs a heating and air conditioning company. Okay. And it's really straightforward when you can say, I need to make one truck profitable, right? Okay. Each truck is run by 2 technicians. Each truck needs to bill out this many hours a day. Each truck has this much associated cost with it, right? Yeah. So then you make one truck successful and you go, well, I need another truck. And you put that into the same spreadsheet, and now you've got an extra truck and the same extra expenses and the same extra number of technicians. And I'm probably oversimplifying it because he's a really smart guy, but it's made it modular. So I said, I need to make the shop modular. I need to go, if I have X number of technicians and X number of bays, what's the associated cost with each bay? How much should each technician in each bay be billing out? What's the associated cost with it? What's the profit and loss for each individual bay? So I put in each technician's individual payroll costs, their individual total hours worked, their wage cost per hour. And I don't mean how much I pay them an hour. I mean their wage all plus
benefits,
their wage all in. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Taxes, all that sort of stuff. Right.
Yep. I put in how many hours that technician billed out throughout the year. I track all of our warranty now. So I have a work order that is a warranty RO for the shop. Okay. If we have something that, say, is a comeback, or we put a set of cylinder heads together and there's a leaky valve, I don't go, you're a bad tech, this has a leaky valve, and we didn't do the machine work, right? But let's just say that happens. Uh-huh. The technician that repairs that gets credited with the hours for repairing that issue, even though it's a warranty concern. But if that warranty is attributable to someone's poor workmanship, I make a mistake and I make a warranty RO for something that I just screwed up, then that goes against my own personal efficiency, right? Sure, so then I figure out each individual technician's efficiency and a wage cost per billable hour per technician, right? Okay. I don't know, maybe I'm going too far into
this is
already,
great. But yeah, this is what we need. Keep going.
Okay. So once I figure out each technician's total, like their wage cost per billable hour, my own wage cost per billable hour, then I can take all of my debt servicing costs, my office staff cost, my total fixed costs, and I divide it up by the number of technicians that I'm currently operating with, right?
Yes.
And so if I have, say, 4 technicians or 5 technicians, I can I put that number into my spreadsheet. It divides up the overhead costs and divides it by the number of hours that each technician billed out. And it gives me a total cost per billable hour per technician, which is, a really interesting thing to see, because you can have a small difference in efficiency and it has a wild difference on your total cost per billable hour per tech.
Oh, for sure.
And you can see, hey, if your efficiency is in this range, if you're able to work confidently on all this work that I'm giving you and complete it in a reasonable time frame, I can pay someone quite a lot more money.
Yeah.
If you're marginally slower, if let's say it's an hour a day, back to that kind of hour a day thing. An hour a day is an astronomical amount of billable time when you put that out over, 1,900 hours in a year, 280 work days or whatever it ends up being, right?
Yeah. And this is something we went really deep into when we used to do we did a class with the EFI University for managing a shop. We would go deep into this exact thing, and it was and the class was for like shop owners and managers to kind of like understand how to like properly run the shop. And we went deep into this because it was really intriguing to me to learn that there's an efficiency point when you get to I forget what it is now because it's been probably 6 or 7 years since we last did that. It was before COVID. But when you get to like 70% or so, it is not worth even having the employee because they become more expensive to, the labor costs, the fixed costs, all that sort of stuff they're essentially losing you money on the cars they're working because the costs of having that tech and the more work is actually more than what they're bringing in. So there's a fine line where you have to be above the efficiency, and it sounds like you've worked that out. Yeah,
and I mean, we still have work to do on our efficiency, right? And that's an ongoing conversation we have, weekly. Our Monday morning meeting, we go over our efficiency for the week before. I'm not afraid, and I'm sure I've made people cranky, but I'm not afraid to call people out if they're not performing. Mm-hmm. But we also try to come up with a plan to help improve the situation at the same time, right?
Sure. Not laying blame on people. It's solving a problem, not pointing the problem out, right?
Yes. And a lot of times if someone does have a bad week, 100% it comes back to me, right? Maybe I've allowed them to get a job that's not in their skill set really well, or maybe there's a job that we've brought into the shop that we shouldn't have brought into the shop because we didn't have the right tools or the right training for it or whatever, right? But I like having the conversation about it weekly at minimum because it keeps it top of mind for everybody. And if there's a problem, it usually gets brought up in that conversation. And, it's nice when I have that conversation with techs and they say, yeah, like maybe that was my fault because XYZ, or, I struggled with this for these reasons. Maybe we can do something about it. I try to make sure that it's a constructive conversation, right? If all I ever do is, once again, yell at people and be cranky if they're not performing as well as they would like to or as well as I would like to, then it's just going to be us, eventually it's just going to be us going our separate ways and me finding somebody else who, if I haven't given them a space where they can be successful in, they're going to struggle and be frustrated and cranky with me too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyways.
So you're using the spreadsheet to track total employee cost per hour with as well as their efficiency, and then how many billable hours you can achieve in a year, essentially, with the people that you have. And that's how you're using the spreadsheet to look where you can make improvements. So improving efficiency greatly improves profitability, or raising your hourly rate might be a solution if you can't improve the efficiency any further, or bringing in more people. So that's kind of essentially what you're looking for, then, right?
Yeah. So I get my year-end statement from my accountant, and he's a really good guy, really helpful. And usually when I go talk to him about my year-end, I've already tried to take this and put it into my spreadsheet for the next year and make it all work right and look the way I want it to look. Because undoubtedly there's errors between what I've calculated everything should be based on, what I've logged for hours and logged for build hours in my Shop Assist and put all that data into my sheet. When it comes out to what I actually charged through QuickBooks, there's always going to be some errors. And anyways, I try to put all the data from my year end into this sheet for the year that's complete. So 2023, I took all of my data from 2023, put it into this sheet, all my part sales, cost of goods sold, my labor sales in QuickBooks versus what my calculated labor sales in my Shop Assist should have been. I actually track that difference. I call that my office efficiency number.
Okay.
And that's something I've seen improved for the last few years, which is really cool to see, a difference between what you should have maybe charged for things and what you actually charge for things.
Okay.
And if I have some kind of glaring error in my calculation, so let's say at the end of the year, it says, I talk to my accountant and he says, you made X amount of dollars this year, or you lost X amount of dollars this year, right? My sheet should spit out a number that matches that. So if I'm not seeing something that's close to it at least, then I look for where those errors could be happening. Maybe I have to talk to my accountant and try to figure that out. One thing to think about is you have all your oil changes put in and you say, this is my shop rate, and I've done 261 oil changes this last year. I didn't charge shop rate for those oil changes. I charged, $35 a piece for the labor on those oil changes.
Yeah,
so
flat
if
rate
I
or something different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So fixed price tasks, we'll throw the calculation out. So if I can bring in one or two of those where maybe there's a difference, maybe we're giving people a special deal for oil changes, for example, that's the easy one. If you do 261 of those in a year, you're supposed to bill out X amount of hours if you did it at shop rate, but your flat rate charge for that's much lower, then you can take that out of your calculated labor sales from my Shop Assist, right?
Okay.
And all of a sudden the sheet's a little more on target, right? So I've been doing this sheet for, a couple of years now. I think I'm moving on to my, this will be my third year running this sheet, and I'm going to have a few revisions on it. But, last year, by the time I put all my data into my sheet to give me a realistic view at the year that just happened, I was within a few percent. I was pretty darn close. And I put that in as a fudge factor, I call it. I put that in, and then I can start changing things for the next year. I go, hey, what if I had one more technician? What if everybody in a perfect world billed out the same amount of hours with one more tech, and, this is what the situation would be. Oh, that's the difference it makes, right?
Yeah.
Or I can go, if I had one more technician, from what I've seen, our shop efficiency drops off by this much further, Now our efficiency is at this point instead of this point, and we have one more technician. Okay, that actually doesn't look really any better. Or maybe that does look a bit better. Or it's actually worse, Or, what if I went and rented this other building? What if I moved the shop and our overhead was this different? Okay, so now, I've got a more affordable space, but a few less square feet. What does that look like in how I think it might affect our efficiency? Or if I downsized and ran 2 less technicians and our overhead was this, or if we bought a building and, you can start putting in different numbers. So each year I'll set up, hey, this is how my last year looked exactly, all my individual technician efficiencies, and calculating out kind of our labor profit, our part sales profit, all these different things, and going, all right, now if I change these different things, because it's all calculated from the basics, right?
Okay.
It's all calculated out from efficiency, from wage cost per billable hour, total cost per billable hour.
Yeah.
I can now change my overhead. I can now change my shop rate, right? Because I have my shop rate input as a calculation for my total labor profit that it puts out, right? Projected. Yep. And I can go, what if my shop rate was $160 an hour? and it'll give me that number, assuming I build out the same amount of hours. Well, what if I lose 10% of my work because I raise my shop rate? What does that look like?
Sure.
You know, so you can start seeing how these things have a relationship, and and experiment with changing things and seeing how you think that might affect the next year, right?
Okay. Now, do you treat, like when you get general repair stuff in and you're pulling like actual book hours for that estimated time, are you calculating that different than any of the custom fab, race tuning stuff?
So the only thing we have in the shop that's a different hourly rate is the dyno tuning currently. But I track things through MSA as either hourly, fixed price, or book hours.
Okay, so
now,
you do all three then?
Yes,
okay.
And I make sure that when I go through my calculations, I'm calculating them separately and in different ways, right? So if you have a book hour task, if you charge 5 hours for it, the technician's credited with 5 hours for it, whether it took them 3.5 hours or it took them 14 hours. It's 5 hours is what we build out.
Sure.
That's what that was, worth essentially, right?
Yeah. And that's something the general repair guys, they're all far more efficient, I feel, than most performance shops because all they're dealing with is that book time stuff, which is, for the most part, beatable basically all the time. When you have your hourly stuff, if it's hourly, you can never beat the book time. It's just you get 1 hour for 1 hour billable time for 1 hour of work, and you can't ever. There's no multiplier on that, so it's much harder to, get ahead with performance and hourly stuff than it is with the book time, and that's something that I feel like a lot of people miss as such a big point is when you are doing hourly stuff, you need to be on top of tracking the time, or else you're negative basically immediately. You miss 1 hour, you're basically done for the day. You've lost all the money you could have made. So
absolutely. And when I worked at a dealership, I was a younger tech at the time. I wasn't the fastest tech, but I still typically build out 170 to 200 hours every month. Mm-hmm. Right? So that would put me at somewhere between 100 and 115% efficiency or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And when I switched to running the shop, I can't say that I ever really had the shop above 40 to 45% efficiency, and we were probably averaging 35 to 40% efficiency when we got shop management software, right?
Yeah.
And there was 3 of us to begin with, and really only 2 of us really worked full time here. But the 2 of us that did work full time here, our efficiency was terrible, and we were both, typically 100 to 115% efficient in a dealership environment, right? So if I came into work, I was there for 10 or 12 hours, I'm probably billing out 12 or 14 hours, maybe 15 hours, Mm-hmm. But you bring someone's car in for an inspection, or we did a lot of reconditioning, right? So as long as you can get approval for doing brakes, by the time you're done the inspection and you've done an oil change, put an air filter on a car, you might have got approval to machine the rotors and, some different front end work. So while you're doing different services, you can be machining a rotor while you're doing an oil change.
Yeah.
You can be, so you can get a lot more done in the same time frame because it is flat rate or book hour tasks, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you've put all these systems in place. How has it improved your quality of life as an owner?
It's made a huge difference, right? So, when I first built my spreadsheet and said, hey, this is where I think my hourly rate is going to be for the next year, I looked at it 6 months in, and I had a technician that had broken his foot and had missed a bunch of work and, a number of different environmental factors, and I recalculated my effective hourly rate, and it was many dollars higher than I was currently charging an hour. And I went, all right, I guess we have to charge more, for an hour, right?
Yeah.
So there's countless changes we make every year, but we were chatting before the podcast. I was just at my son's soccer game. I was at 2 of his soccer games today. it's only been the last couple of years that I've been to my kids' soccer games or events like that, right?
Yeah. Which is the entire point of all this, like to be able to spend the time with your family, right?
So it's been huge for me. We've gone from regularly going backwards to, supporting my technicians and their families and myself as well. And, it's not like I would come in and start telling people that it's easy now, because that's not the case, right? But, I've taken time. Last year I took a holiday. It's the first holiday I've taken with my family. Like, I took a full week off. It's the first time I've done that in 10 years. And, the soccer thing is just awesome. I love watching my son play soccer. I like going to my daughter's, dance recitals and musical events and being involved with my family, because that's not something that I've, really, I haven't been very involved with my family for a lot of years, right?
Right. Did you find it difficult getting the rest of your team on board, or were they pretty open to like start doing whatever you needed them to do?
We actually implemented MSA twice. The first time was before I was the only owner of the shop, and it was quite difficult at that time, hence why it never really got fully implemented. I've got a really great team, and I think I've done a good job of communicating to them why we're running it, and we've had really good buy-in from core members, at least, and it's something that's trickled down. So now I would say everyone has really good buy-in on it, and it wasn't easy. It's definitely hard to change the way things have always been, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not as malleable as I once was,
Right.
I'm a very patient person, I would say, and I'm probably more patient and understanding than I should be at times. But when it comes to shop management stuff, I know exactly what it takes for us to be successful now.
Okay.
Yep. I know exactly how I think things should be done, and I know that if we're doing them those ways and it doesn't work right, then I'll be able to track that it's not working right for these reasons, right? So I know that it has to be bought into. There's no option, If someone wants to come here and work as a technician and they don't feel like putting notes into the shop management software properly or communicating with customers through it properly or, buying into it, they won't be here,
Right.
There's not an option to not be bought in any longer.
Sure. Yeah. So really the only difficult part was transitioning people who were before using it to show them the value of it by doing it, right? And then now the new people, when they come on board, it's this is a system and it's how we're going to do it, right? So it's easier to get new people on it because if they want the job, that's a part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how are you looking to further improve your shop operations?
One thing I need to do a better job of is budgeting for growth. I need to make sure that we have a little bit more set aside for new equipment and things that would help us improve and add more services. So definitely we could use some updated shop equipment right now. And we're also looking for new employees. So you can always add a lot to your team if you can find someone that's really highly skilled. And those are kind of the main ones right now. I'd like to be able to do alignments. We don't have an alignment machine. In the last 2 weeks, my parts washer, my tire balancer, both died and have been confirmed to require replacement at this point. They're no longer worth fixing. And my tire changer broke. Now, it's an easy repair, but it's a pretty ancient thing anyways. I'd love to go buy a brand new, alignment machine and parts washer and tire balancer and tire changer and cylinder head, valve cutting and seat cutting equipment tomorrow. But we'll be prioritizing those things as we go. Mm-hmm. And, definitely the shop management side of things is still, hugely in the works. we've had really good feedback from our customers, and it's not like we have 100% of our customers happy, but we've had a lot happier customer base, I would say, over the last 3-4 years since we've really strongly implemented it. And we're getting better at using it. Like I said, every Monday we have kind of our weekly meeting, and we have our touch points for the team, and everyone's really good about following through with them. I mean, at least for a few days, and then the next Monday we have a little reminder meeting and go, how we go changing this and this and this. And some people, nod their heads, and some people go, you know what, anyways.
Right.
That side of things, there's endless improvement to be had, but yeah, I mean, definitely budgeting for growth, some new equipment, offering some more services, and one or two more employees that have some valuable skills would be great.
Okay. And how are you marketing your business? Like, it sounds like the race car helps, word of mouth. Are you doing trade shows or using the forums or Facebook ads or radio or mailers? What are you using for it?
So there's kind of two sides to our business. Like I was saying before, with our online store, which is a new thing, that almost, I mean, it's still us, but it's not handled in the same way really at all. It's almost like two separate businesses. Whereas, so the advertising is kind of different, right? So I have a really good website guy that's been helping me figure out how to make our website show up when you do a Google search for a certain product, or analyzing what's being effective and what's causing problems there. And that's something I'm just starting to learn on, like I'm just at the very beginning of knowledge for that. And that's largely depended on by somebody else, right? But there is some paid marketing for that. There is Google ads and stuff there. We don't do really much for paid Facebook ads. We do for kind of the odd one here and there if we're doing a special event maybe, but really I just post, what we're doing on Instagram and share it to Facebook most of the time, Mm-hmm. Definitely as far as our performance work, it's always been just being out at the track, having a fast car out there.
And helping people at the track. I always found that more useful than even running my own car at the track, right?
Yes, and that's one downside to having our Impreza now. Like for years, I was always the guy at the track that I just showed up with a laptop. That was it.
Yeah,
It was always the other guys that had the fast cars, right? I was the one with kids. I was the one that took my car apart before my son was born, and then realized that being a parent and all this stuff is expensive.
Yep.
And my own car stayed apart. It was built with like a turbo H6 in it at one point, and then I ran out of funds again, and I sold the ECU and the wiring harness I built and the engine and the turbo setup, and so I was never the guy that had a fast car. I had a Mitsubishi Mirage that my family was driving around in, and I remember seeing one of my customers in it one day at a set of lights, and he looked over at me and recognized me, and I went, oh no, like he just recognized me, right? So I roll my window down, he rolls his down, he says, is that what you drive? I'm like, it's my wife's car, like anyways, now that I'm the guy here, we've always been out at the track. We've always been chatting with people and helping them at the track and showing what we're capable of doing. And now I don't have as much time to assist other people if I'm at a track day and I'm running my own car, right? Sure. So, but yeah, track days are big for it. Helping people at the track are big for it. Word of mouth is really, really important. It's not, it's a small community, right?
Yeah.
If you build someone's car for them and it blows up because you did something stupid, people are going to know about it.
Yeah. That's also something I find very different between like the performance world and the general repair stuff. General repair guys like live and die by Google reviews, and performance people live and die by word of mouth. Like, I could absolutely care less at all how many Google reviews and what they say, because it's just like nobody uses it. It's entirely like, who tuned your car, man? Your car's super fast. I'm going to them, right? You know, that's the marketing that we do.
Yeah. So yeah, like not really much on Facebook. I do all of our own Facebook and Instagram. There's the odd time where I put good effort into it, and I'll watch a presentation on it at PRI, and I'll have this big plan for the year about how I'm going to run our Facebook and Instagram, and maybe it gets a 50% effort because I end up being overwhelmed with other stuff. But I do the best we can, but that's definitely not where most of our business comes, I don't think. Okay. That being said, I try to shoulder that onto the web store now.
Okay.
So I try to direct people to the web store, and it has had a little bit more renewed effort on my part since we've started the web store to try to use the car and the Facebook and Instagram to direct people there, right? Because a lot of our sales there aren't local people, right?
Sure. Okay, we like to take action on Do It For a Living, of course, and I have a great takeaway from this already, and I'm going to get with you after the podcast maybe sometime this week and go over your spreadsheet and see if we can add some of that stuff into MSA, that your metrics that you're using, that we could put into the software directly rather than having to do it outside of the system. But give us some suggestions that you can give our listeners that they can do to improve their situation.
Well, the number one thing is figure out your effective hourly rate. So I know that most people start doing a performance shop because they love building fast cars. They're good at it. They think they have something to offer that maybe other people don't. And I also know how many performance shops in our province have shut down because of issues with the CRA, or not being able to pay their bills, not being able to pay their techs properly, warranty problems, whatever it might be. Like, it's just an astronomical amount of shops that start up, and then even established shops that just go out of business. And they're not going out of business because they're making money hand over fist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nobody here is doing that, but you should be able to make a living doing this if you do good work, right?
Yeah.
And you work hard, right?
Right. And I feel like we are definitely far more skilled and it's a niche skill, but we're far more skilled than your run-of-the-mill mechanics, and we should be paid accordingly, right? Like that just has always made sense to me. If you're good enough to run a shop, build engines, tune cars, do all that sort of stuff, you're a step above normal, right? And that deserves more pay than normal.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people think about deserve, and there's a big difference between deserve and earned.
Yeah, right? I agree, yeah.
Like, there's only one way to earn something. There's lots of ways to deserve it, right? And it's really difficult. But the number one thing you can do is sit down. If you need to talk to your accountant or your bookkeeper, or go through your pile of receipts, or pay somebody to do it for you, whatever you got to do, figure out what your effective hourly rate is, put together some targets for you. I've been having my own 5-year plan and individual financial targets for every single year, and it's really valuable for me to go, this is where I want to be. How am I going to get there? First of all, figure out your effective hourly rate. That's your cost for every hour you bill out. Make sure you're not doing work for family and friends for free or for right. super cheap. And you go, wow, this is $40 an hour less than my effective hourly rate. So every hour I work on, so-and-so's car on the buddy deal, I'm actually paying $40 to work on their car.
Yep.
It's actually costing me $40 an hour to work on your car right now. Figure out your effective hourly rate. Give yourself a little bit of a margin that's going to get you somewhere where hopefully, you're going to be able to make a bit of money doing this if you're good at it, right?
Yep.
And put effort out there to educate yourself. Listen to this podcast. Listen to any other podcast you can find that's interviewing people that are running businesses, street alpha, whatever, right? Maybe I shouldn't advertise for other podcasts on here. I don't know.
Yeah.
And there are resources out there, right? So there's lots of different audiobooks and books that I've read and written in the margins. There's Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. That's a really good one.
Yep.
The One Thing by Gary Keller. That's a really good one. So if I can figure out the one thing that is more important than everything else and will make everything else I do easier to do or unnecessary, for me, that's each technician needs to bill out X number of hours a day.
Okay.
So if I can sit down with every one of my technicians each morning and say, here's the work, here's the parts, here's how you do this job, and it should be worth more hours or at least as many hours as I need each technician to bill out each day, then I've set myself up for success. Yeah. If I can't do that, I haven't done the one most important thing of the day. You know what I mean? If I've got 150 emails sitting in my email inbox, but I haven't said, hey, this is what I need you to work on right now. These are some of the roadblocks you might run into. This is how you do this job. Here you go. I'll talk to you in 8 hours when, the day's over. You know what I mean? Or I'll talk to you at lunch. You know what I mean? If I can't do that, then I shouldn't be doing anything else, right? Sure. Selling the Invisible is a really good book. Harry Beckwith, that one's all about service marketing. Lots of good resources out there. And if anyone, wants to pick someone's brain, there's guys like you or me. Like I every time I talk to someone else who's a shop owner, we usually talk for an hour or more, and it usually turns into talking about, how to run a business.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. All right, so let's close this thing out with some quick answer questions. So just tell me like one sentence answer, kind of like what you think about these here. So what's a game-changing product you've seen in the last year?
I like that new Link G5 Voodoo Pro.
Okay, ECU. Sure.
Yeah. It's got wireless connectivity and GPS and DI control, and that's pretty cool. We do a lot of Link stuff, so
okay.
I'm getting my first one right away. I'm looking forward to try that out.
Okay. Do you have a favorite app that you use on your phone?
Spotify.
Okay.
Audiobooks and podcasts.
There you go. All right. And what's your favorite shop tool?
My dyno.
Okay. And what are you driving right now?
I drove to the shop tonight in a 97 OBS Chev. I call it our shop truck. It's 100% stock, except for it's lowered 7 and 5, and has nice husky floor mats in it.
Okay. And what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
I know the EV stuff's coming simply because of the environmental concerns. So I don't know if we're going to get there in Canada in my career right now, where that becomes where this industry is. I think it's going in that direction. So I could definitely see us in 10 or 15 years, or maybe in the next few years, doing an EV conversion or getting into that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The EV conversions actually kind of excite me. I keep thinking about doing one, but it's not where our business is based currently, but sure. Maybe at some point, right?
Yeah. Okay. And how do we connect with you and your company?
For any sales or, booking in work, that's all through Tish in the front office, sales@afrautoworks.com. If you want to chat with me about, tuning questions or ask me some business-related questions or whatever from listening to this podcast, you can email me directly at adam@afrautoworks.com. I do my best to at least get through my emails every week. And you can check out our online store, afrautoworksstore.com, and AFR Autoworks on Instagram and Facebook, mostly just for following along. If you actually message us on Instagram or Facebook, you might get a message back, but you're going to get an automated message that says, please email sales@afrautoworks.com. So, but definitely check us out there for, pictures of videos of stuff that we're working on and doing, right?
Yep. All right, Adam, I want to thank you again for taking the time to share your story and, giving us some insight on how you run your business.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and it's really really neat to be on here, and hopefully, someone who's running a shop or just starting out running a shop will listen to this and find it helpful in some way.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Right on. Take care, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.